I want to tell you a story about the day my life changed. This story vividly illustrates the value of recognizing where you are on your journey and being deliberate about where you are going. When I was 15 years old, I was really into music. I had played one instrument or another since about the age of 6. I was playing in rock bands. In school, I sang in the choir and the jazz choir, played in the band and the pep band and the jazz band. I played and sang in churches that I didn't even belong to and basically did everything I could to get my hands on music in the small music scene of the Eastern Washington college town that I called home. I was one of the strongest musicians in my school, and I felt like a musical big man on campus. Yes, that was the foreshadowing part of this story. For fun, I would transcribe bass lines from my favorite records. Yes, the vinyl kind, especially the awesome lines of Geddy Lee from the band Rush, among others. At the time, I was into jazz, and I had some great jazz records. Many that I had borrowed from my hip parents. I still have some of them. Maybe I'll give them back one day. But I did not know much about playing bass in a jazz setting. I would do my best in those jazz band rehearsals, but I knew I was out of my depth. And apparently so did my awesome high school music teacher, Mr. Swisher, who saw a flyer for a summer jazz workshop over in Western Washington and pushed me to sign up for it. A certain name caught Mr. Swisher's eye, someone he knew could help me, because that summer, the bass teacher at the week-long summer workshop was none other than the great Ray Brown, one of the most influential bass players in the history of jazz, and one of the most recorded players of all time in jazz and beyond. You might not know his name, but I can guarantee that you have heard his playing on something. And if you're a jazz fan, you definitely know who he is, having played on some of the most influential albums in the history of the music. If jazz bass were baseball, Ray Brown would have been like a Babe Ruth, and his rookie card would be worth a mint today. Instead, his rookie card looked like this. Summer came, and my incredibly supportive parents found a way to get me to this expensive camp that was over 300 miles away. I'll always remember and appreciate how influential this experience was for me in so many ways, and how fortunate I was to have parents who supported my music so completely. When I arrived at the camp, I was blown away by everything. The faculty were absolutely world-class, mostly from LA and New York, with a handful of greats from the Seattle area, which was the closest major city. The students were mostly advanced high school students, college-aged musicians, and even some professionals who came to spend a week honing their skills while rubbing shoulders with the jazz greats that had been assembled as a faculty. For the jazz fans listening, some of the faculty names you might recognize other than Ray Brown were Milt Jackson, Shorty Rogers, June Christie, Bill Watrous, Bobby Shue, Bud Shank, Cedar Walton, Howard Roberts, Jeff Hamilton, and Mickey Roker. These are giants in the field, and I got to spend a week with them, breathing rarefied air and seeing and hearing some of the most incredible music I had experienced. I was also unquestionably the worst bass player there. I did my best. I was just the least experienced. We would get together every day in the bass masterclass, about 15 of us with the master, talking about the bass and taking turns playing things. And every day I prayed that he wouldn't call on me to play. I was terrified. On the very first day, the standard had been set by one of the students, Ben Wolfe, who shortly thereafter went on to have a huge international career with Harry Connick Jr., Wynton Marsalis, and Diana Krall, among many others. Check out his bio online. He's the real deal. Ben got up and played through a couple of standards with the technical facility and musicianship of a great master. And for the first time, I saw where the actual standard was. Gulp. I hid in the shadows. After 2 days of this, of trying to keep up in the combo rehearsals and struggling to understand what everyone was even talking about most of the time, I felt demoralized, as if I was in the wrong place. That night, after dinner, when everyone was splitting up to go to various impromptu jam sessions that I was not invited to, I went to my room to practice and regroup. I put on my favorite Rush Songs mixtape, the one I had made for playing along with, and I played through those songs to settle my mind. After sweating through a fierce rendition of the tune YYZ, I was startled to hear a voice at my door. "Hey, Zac, that was awesome!" It was Ben Wolfe. He had been listening at the door for a while and finally stuck his head in the room as the last notes of YYZ rang out. Of course he was a Geddy Lee fan. He was a bass player. We're all fans. And we had this amazing conversation about the music, about bass playing, and about how Ben loved all these lines, and how much he appreciated the work it took for me to master them. He impressed on me the value of the ear training skills I had developed in learning all of those lines, and how helpful they were going to be in my study of jazz. I was floored. Here he was, the best of the students, a fully formed player who came into my room to appreciate the 15-year-old me with my long hair and my totally rock and roll black and white Rickenbacker bass. Just like Geddy Lee's, by the way. I was floating on a cloud, and I realized that I was okay, that I did know things that I could play, and that I just had a lot to learn about jazz. He helped me see that I was on track. Whatever small mercy Ben was showing me in that moment taught me a big lesson. Everyone starts somewhere. Everyone is on the path. Everyone had a first day with their instrument, which was followed by a first year, eventually a first decade. Nobody springs forth fully formed like Athena emerging from Zeus's head, fully grown in battle armor. We all start at the beginning and work our way to whatever destination we set our sights on. Until that point, I had fixed my sights on developing my rock and roll electric bass chops, among other things, and I had made good progress. The following day sealed the deal. In the bass masterclass, Ray Brown called me up in front of the bass class. It was my turn, and I had no idea what I was going to play. I didn't really know any jazz tunes. I had only read things in jazz band, and I wasn't even a good reader. I made sure to work hard on that skill later on. Ray tried to coax me into playing something. Anything. "How about you just play through a blues?" he asked. I didn't even really know how to do that. I felt that crushing feeling all over again. But then, Ben chimed up. "Hey man, play one of those great Geddy lines for us." And suddenly, some of the weight was lifted off my shoulders. The cool student validated me and gave me license to play the wrong thing for the great master. I don't remember which line I played for Ray in the class. I was nervous and fumbled through something or another. Ray was kind, said he never really was much of an electric player himself and was impressed by my dexterity, and made one or two other comments. I still felt like I was the guy in the wrong room, but then the next thing that happened literally changed my life. Ray asked, "Who are you?" I'm Zac," I replied. "No, I mean, who do you want to be?" I knew the answer. I want to be a great jazz bass player. I want to get to work with the best musicians in the world. Okay, Ray said. You are a great jazz bass player. I don't think so, I replied. Yes, he retorted. You are, but you're still in the early stages. If you decide right now that you are a great jazz bass player, then every decision you make, every direction you go, every investment you make in yourself will be in service of that goal. From this point forward, you are a great jazz bass player, one with a lot of work to do. And then he showed me how to play a simple walking line over a jazz blues. He showed me the next bit of work I needed to do on my path to become what I wanted to become. I did have a lot of work to do, but it all came into focus that each step I took was in a certain direction, one small step at a time, leading me to a particular place, leading me to who I was. As long as I focused ahead in the right direction, and as long as I kept working hard towards it, I would become that destiny I had chosen for myself. Within a decade, I was playing professional gigs as a jazz bass player with some of the top musicians in the world, including engagements with the drummer from the Ray Brown trio, Jeff Hamilton. What I'm describing here is not some kind of black magic. It involves work, hard work, and lots of it. It's about deciding that you can do whatever realistic goal you set your mind to, and if you work hard at it with a single-minded focus, your direction will be set, your goals defined, and your destiny shaped. You will work tirelessly to get there, and one day people will call you, and I quote, talented. But you'll know better. It's not talent. You focused and worked your tail off to get there. Ray Brown changed my life that week at the Budshank Jazz Workshop, and in the years following, I transcribed tons of his lines. I had the amazing opportunity to study with him later on as a fellow of the Thelonious Monk Institute, and then later on in Los Angeles. He even hired me at one point to transcribe a bunch of his songs and lines for him, for his publishing company. That was, without a doubt, the coolest gig I ever had. And ultimately, the connections to Ray and to the Budshank Jazz Workshop in Port Townsend led me to study under his protege, John Clayton, the mentor I moved to LA to study with. I went to Port Townsend every summer for about 10 years, studying and playing with a different set of greats each season, and eventually being hired onto the staff, which was a dream come true. That place changed my life, and it all sprung from a little support from a much further along peer, and a simple set of words from one of the greatest jazz bass players of all time. Thank you, Mr. Wolfe, and thank you to the great Ray Brown.